All right, I'd like to thank everybody for coming to this debate. Well, you know, David has mentioned a lot of arguments against Islam on his website, and most of it I disagree with. I think it's a misrepresentation of what we believe. But I was told to go first tonight, and so what I'm going to do, I'm actually making an affirmative case for why we believe in what we believe. But what we can do tonight is probably debate all of David Wood's issues and all of my issues all in one debate. It's just not going to happen. So I decided to talk about Surah 9, verse 29, and why this is one of the most, why 7 reasons why this is the most magnificent verse in the Quran. Now, you know, David's on record as saying that Surah 9, verse 29 teaches violence against unbelievers. And I can understand how some Christians can get, or you know, non-believers can get offended by that. You know, after all, well, I think when we even enter the topic of jihad in Islam, people make certain presuppositions before even opening up the Quran. One of the most common presuppositions is that Christianity is inherently a peaceful religion, which preaches love and tolerance for all. So when you read a verse like this, according to David, which teaches to fight against disbelievers, well, Islam looks aggressive, Islam looks violent. And you know, I actually looked up that verse, and I'd like to read for it to you, and let me tell you what it really says here. It says, and fight those who believe not in Allah and the last day. Hold on a second. This must be some mistake here. I think this is just a typo, I think. Let me check it out. I actually have a Quran. Let me check it up on my Quran. This is obviously a typo. We're going to get down to the bottom of this. Hold on, let me see what it says over here. Let me grab my little notes over here. This can't be. It says here, all right. David, it doesn't say that. It says fight those who believe not in Allah in the last day. Well, can we change the topic to what we all have in common? That's actually a much better topic, don't you think? I mean, actually, because we do have a lot in common. With the moderator, would that be okay? We could just change that topic? No. Fight those who believe not in Allah on the next day. Wait a second. We're forgetting something. That presupposition. The presupposition about Christians being, you know, inherently peaceful, that preaches love and tolerance for all. The presupposition is wrong. The truth of the matter is, during the 6th century, during the life of Muhammad, the Christians were one of the most violent, intolerant, and sadistic people ever to be recorded in world history. 6th century Christianity condemned religious freedom and subjected other co-religionists as well as other religions to blood-curdling torture. This is how they would bring people into the faith. And they were a clear and present danger that, if not confronted, would unleash a brutal campaign of genocide, torture, and barbarianism until all knees are bent to Christ. This verse, Surah 9, verse 29, came to meet this challenge and fought so that people can have the right to believe in the religion of their choice, a fundamental right which 6th century Christians denied. And of course, for those of you who don't know, Muhammad came in the 6th century. This era was known as the Dark Ages of Christianity. Now, I know a lot of Christians might say, well, the Bible doesn't teach that. Well, I would disagree with that, respectfully. And that's what we're going to debate tomorrow night, but we're not going to debate that tonight. That's just going to be way too much issues to debate. So let me go ahead and start establishing some evidence to back up my assertions tonight and my arguments. Probably one of the greatest evidences for that is, during the 6th century, during this era, the Christians declared that the entire Jewish race must be exterminated. And thus the Holocaust was commenced, and nothing stood in the way of the complete extermination of the Jews except this one man, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one verse, Surah 9, verse 29. But that's just not my opinion. Let me read to you what the Jewish Virtual Library has to say, what the Jewish historians have to say about this incident. It said, it looked like an end of Judaism in Judea. Why? Because the Christians declared that this race must be exterminated. However, things were going on in the Arabian desert, which within 7 years would change the picture of the Near East and of the whole world. So what was going on in the Arabian desert? What was going on? That's Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that's Surah 9 verse 29. So at this point, have I established enough evidence? Is that enough evidence to show that out there, you're a man sitting in Arabia, and somewhere out there you recognize there is a clear and present danger out there, looming out there, an advancing Christian army, bent on complete extermination of anyone who doesn't believe in what they believe. I think that is enough evidence. But there's a lot more. Let's go ahead and read from Augustana University. So really what I'm doing here, I'm just giving you the historical background of the Quran. And I think that's enough to, because this is the problem. I think people, they try to interpret the Quran according to their own whims, but they don't know the historical context. So let me continue. The historical context. We read over there from Augustana History Department. They talk about the era of Muhammad's time. They say, Christian leaders forced conversion of others with the application of torture. During this time period, burning at the stake, drowning, and suffocation were common tortures. And that's how they used to bring people into Christianity. But the Jews were no better. We read inside Surah Ibn Ishaq that the Jews surrounded the Christians and gave them an ultimatum to convert to Judaism. And when they refused, they killed over 20,000 Christians. And then there were the never-ending wars between the pagans and the Christians. That was known as the Persian-Roman Wars. For 600 years, they fought these wars with no end. But Surah 9 verse 29, chapter 9 verse 29, ended all of this. It ended 600 years of fighting between the pagans and the Romans, and took these Jews and Christians and pagan and made them live under one nation as fellow neighbors. And so that brings me to the next argument, which you're going to find. I believe everybody has this sheet over here where I list all my arguments. And let's pause here and let's focus on this one argument. Is there a necessity for fighting against non-believers now that I've given you the historical context? Okay? Is there a necessity and a moral obligation to fight against the non-believers? I believe there is. I believe nobody can deny that. There is a necessity to fight against them. Let's move on to the next argument. And that Islam teaches the golden rule. And that golden rule, as we read inside chapter 4, verse 75, really needs no interpretation. And what is wrong with you that you fight not in the cause of Allah? For those are weak, ill-treated, oppressed among men, women, and children, whose cry is, Our Lord, rescue us from this town whose people are oppressors, and raise us from you one who will help us. You know, it's so ironic. You look in the Congo, you look, even in today's time, you flip on the TV and you'll literally see people praying the prayer of chapter 4, verse 75 of the Quran. So the good Lord is saying, this is a reason why we fight. I know some people say, no, fight is to spread Islam. My advice for Mr. David Wood is don't bring up that argument tonight. This is some good advice from him. But anyways, if you want to bring that up, that's fine. Now let's see how the companions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam understood jihad. It says over here, Omar says inside Sahih Muslim, so jihad, and this is talking about Surah 9 verse 29 again, because Surah 9 verse 29 are the marching orders. Okay? It doesn't really tell you why you should go and fight against the non-believers. You'll get why you should fight it in chapter 4 verse 75, that verse which I just quoted for you. It says over here, Omar said, and fight on behalf to secure their safety. So this is also a part of warfare. And this is the reason why so many Christians allowed the Muslims to enter their lands. We read also in history, after the Battle of Yarmouk, that when the Muslims entered their lands, They began dancing and playing music. Because why? Because the Christians were so oppressive to them. Well, also another thing which a lot of people don't understand is Christianity was very diverse. We had many different versions of Christianity. But it was the Roman Christians who believed in doctrinal unity and subjected the other group of Christians to blood-curdling torture. So Omar comes and says, we will fight to secure your safety. And also, you have a very volatile situation. You have Jews who are just the victims of genocide. You have the Christians. And you have the pagans, now all fellow citizens. So obviously there's going to be, that's a very volatile mixture. There's going to be a lot of revenge attacks and stuff like that. Omar ibn Abdulaziz, one of the most prominent Salaf, says, war will be waged for any enemies of the disbelievers. So this is also another reason why Muslims fight. And this is something which also should be mentioned when we understand Surah 9 verse 29. And I think the mistake David Wood has made, and people like Robert Spencer, is they read verse 9:29 and they read it with this presupposition that the Jews and Christians were innocent. We are peace-loving people. Now, whether that's true today, I won't confirm or deny that, but that's not the historical context of the Quran. Whether you agree with it or not, that's not the way the Quran was altered. Okay, so at this stage of the game, I think I need to help out Mr. David Wood here. I can't leave him like this. Okay. I got to take the stage here. I got to take the stand over here. That initial shock was over. Well, I'm glad I remembered the presupposition. Our presupposition, was wrong. Okay. Now, David, there is a hadith out there which says, and Prophet Muhammad said, and I have been ordered to fight against the people until they testify that there is no God but Allah, and if they do so, their property will be safe, and goes on like that. Don't bring this hadith into tonight's debate. If you bring this hadith up tonight, you're going to be toast. All right, so that's just some advice, okay? Now, I remember I think I was talking to Sam and Dave about this. I pointed out, hey, listen, Surah 9 verse 29, this is, I think, was on AV and SAT. I said, Surah 9 verse 29, this verse came and saved the Jews from the genocide of what the Christians were doing to the Jews. That is a very good thing. It's very interesting what the response was. You know what the response was? Oh yeah, who's going to save them from the genocide of Muhammad? And I remember I was just sitting there and I just kind of froze. I'm like, what? Because they didn't really refute my argument. Rather, what they're saying, what they're trying to show, is that Muhammad was a bad man. Muhammad was no better. Muhammad was not consistent. Okay, but even this false argument, let's just agree with it. That doesn't prove what I'm saying is wrong. It's still a historical fact. You see? So I just want to point that out tonight, that trying to prove that Muhammad was a bad man, Muhammad was no better, Muhammad was not consistent, doesn't prove my argument to be false. David Wood's job tonight is to either agree or disagree with the 7 arguments for that. And there's also a lot of people say, well, what about Muhammad? Didn't he say to kill the apostates? Which again, I disagree. Because one of the arguments there was, I said, look, Surah 9 verse 29 came to fight for the religious freedoms of people, a fundamental right which the Christians of the 6th century denied. So they'll say, but you see, Muhammad taught to kill the apostates, which actually isn't really true. But we can get into that, if time persists, we can get into that. But let's hypothetically go along with the canard. That doesn't prove my argument to be wrong. It still is true that the Christians were a threat to religious freedom. They subjected other religions to horrendous acts of torture and violence. Islam and Surah 9 verse 29 came to end this. And whether Muhammad made an exception, a possible exception for the apostates, okay, but that doesn't make my argument to be false. Now, it doesn't mean those issues are not important. They're